fair to say that a lot is going on in Asia if we want to sort of just look at the entire continent. Without a doubt, I think now many of the advancements and developments are happening in this continent. Why do you think that in many areas people are looking at Asia at this point to see where the field is going?
Well, the population is huge for Asia, and there's really a lot of growth now in transplantation. I feel that because of universal healthcare, which is really beginning in so many countries, the financial problems that we used to have that was preventing transplantation has now been addressed. So we have countries like the Philippines where there is universal health care for transplantation, and it provides a lot more access for patients to now have a transplant when they wouldn't have been able to afford to. And we have the developed Asian countries also leading the way with living liver transplantation, with lobar lung transplantation. So they're able to really get into all of this really high technology types of transplantation.
Thank you very much. To introduce Romina Danguilan, you're a nephrologist from Manila in the Philippines. And you're running the upcoming
the Congress of the Asian Society of Transplantation.
Wonderful, in beautiful Cebu.
Yes.
In November this year.
I hope you will be there with us.
I already booked my flight, and I'm grateful that we collaborate here and then in Cebu again.
Yes.
So thanks for coming to this meeting, and thanks for arranging an exciting session together with me where we'll address some of these topics where we feel that you have a particular advancement and actually content to deliver that other people in Europe and beyond can learn from. Now, ABO incompatible kidney transplantation is one of these topics where you have just larger numbers to learn from. Is that because there is less exchange or less domino transplant programs? Or what is the reason why you have such large numbers in certain areas, at least, of ABO incompatible kidney
Yes, well,
transplantations?
in Japan, they have very big problems with disease donation also. So maybe they're really trying to look for other ways in order to use their living donors as much as they can. And therefore, they really had to look at the science and how they could improve their numbers. So they've really done a lot in tweaking the protocols for ABO incompatibility, and they've really risen so quickly and become sort of the model by which other programs have started to do ABO incompatible transplantation.
Very good. I have to apologize maybe for the ignorance, but maybe you can help us understand why in certain countries, at least in Asia, you have these large centers where you are able to do 500 or more live donor liver transplantations, for example. What might happen if that was the case in the US or Europe is that 5 other centers, would be interested in doing this, and very quickly the caseload would divide over many more centers. It doesn't seem to happen, at least not at this point, in, for example, South Korea. Can you explain why that is?
Well, it's easier to create centers of excellence if you're able to just concentrate the transplants in certain hospitals. Like in my hospital in Manila, we do about 260 kidney transplants a year. Now, there are other transplant programs that have been put up, and yet they do only 10, 20 transplants a year. So I feel the key is to identify centers of excellence and send all the patients preferentially to those centers so that they really will gain all the expertise, instead of having several smaller programs that do only a few transplants. I think that should be more economical as well, because to set up a transplant program, you need all the radiology, the immunology, setting up a tissue typing lab, which could be very expensive. So to concentrate on developing just a few centers, but provide access for patients to get there, I think that's the way to go.
Well, I could not agree more. Would you say that there is more governmental restrictions in setting up transplant programs? Is that a reason why once a center is established that there are not a number of other centers immediately opening up?
The experts are very hard to come by. Like maybe the physicians are there, the nephrologists, the surgeons, but what about the immunology lab people, the people who will do the ultrasound, the radiologists? Maybe they're not that many. So that's why when we look at starting a program somewhere, we have to give them a checklist and say, do you have all of these experts there? Do you have all this equipment? And maybe that's causing the delay in quickly setting up transplant programs in other places.
Very good. Not only in the clinical application of transplantation, but also in basic science, it's fair to say that a lot of power, a lot of momentum is happening in many places around Asia. Is the governmental support, the financial support, increasing overall to promote transplant and other type of research?
Well, I think you have to differentiate sort of the very developed Asian nations compared to the developing. So I come from like the developing emerging economy nation, and we don't really have a lot of funding for the hard science, the basic science. So we do mainly a lot of clinical work. Our advantages may be that we have a lot of patients that we're able to transplant, so we have the numbers, so we participate in trials. But if you look at the developed Asian nations like Japan, Korea, even Singapore, Hong Kong, then they will have the means to develop all these labs and have the basic science people that can work on really emerging trends and really be at the forefront of the science in transplantation.
You touched on the diversity within Asia, and we always call it one continent, but of course the diversity may be even bigger than in other continents if you compare it to the US or Europe. How will the landscape look like in 10 years from now, you think?
Well, there's still a lot of uniting that we need to do in order to really behave like one continent. We have different religions, we have people from various cultures, and it's very hard really to put all of those together and act as one. So I think even in 10 years, this may not be solved. We also need time for the developing emerging nations to catch up with our sort of big brothers. And I feel it will still be perhaps the same. And when the developed nations have had more government support, then maybe we'll be able to act as one whole continent going and striving towards the same goals.
Well, I would argue, as we said earlier, for hopefully day 2 of this conference, that you have momentum and the ball is rolling. So the future for transplantation in this continent can almost only be bright.
Yes.
So I wish you the best of luck, and obviously with people such as you guiding the field, guiding the Asian Transplant Society, you're well on your way and you're guided well with a mindset that you just presented to us.
Thank
you
you,
very much
Stefan.
for coming to this conference,
Yes.
for joining me for this interview.
Thank you so much.